Next, Leo Vance. As the council elder's voice boomed across the courtyard, a dead silence fell. 1,000 pairs of eyes snapped to me. There was expectation in some, jealousy in others, and cold assessment in most. But there was no kindness. My name is Leo Vance. For 16 years, I've been living in this world, this strange mix of old-world tradition and something far beyond it. I am the heir to the Vance family, the most powerful dynasty in Ethelgard, and for my entire life, I've worn the title of a once-in-a-generation talent. Today was the reckoning, the ceremony that would awaken my affinity and decide my fate. Beside me stood my fiancée, Isabella Croft, the mayor's daughter. She looked radiant today, a rose in full bloom, but her beautiful eyes held a flicker of tension, a distance I hadn't seen before. "You'll do great, Leo," she whispered, but it sounded like she was trying to convince herself. I didn't answer. I just walked calmly toward the high platform. The affinity stone was a massive slab of black crystal, cold and imposing. I pressed my palm against its surface. A low hum vibrated through the stone, and then it exploded with light. A torrent of color, gold, green, blue, red, and yellow, shot into the sky, a five-hued pillar that lit up half of Ethelgard. A penta-elemental affinity. In its apex tier, one of the elders on the dais gasped. "The heavens have blessed House Vance. Blessed us." My father, Marcus Vance, the family patriarch, was flushed with excitement. Bella's eyes finally lit up with genuine joy. Everyone thought it was over. But then, the pillar of light wavered. As if choked by an invisible hand, it violently contracted, sucked back into the affinity stone in an instant. The crowd erupted in confused murmurs. Then, under the stunned gaze of 1,000 onlookers, a symbol slowly materialized on the face of the black crystal. A strange, ancient-looking symbol made of 4 curved lines. Stranger still, only the bottommost line held a faint, white glow. And it was blinking, on and off, like it was about to die out completely. What kind of affinity is that? I've never seen or heard of anything like it. The whispers from below grew into a tidal wave of confusion. The council elder approached the stone, studying it for a long moment. His face turned red with effort before he finally shook his head in defeat. This affinity, it has no rank, no class. It's unheard of. The power emanating from it is as faint as a firefly's glow. It's negligible. Basically nothing. Basically nothing. The words struck the heart of every Vance family member like a sledgehammer. The color drained from my father's face. He swayed on his feet, nearly collapsing. How can this be? But my greatest enemy, my uncle Silas Vance, let out a triumphant laugh he could no longer suppress. Ha ha ha. A talent? A once-in-a-generation talent? This is the prodigy you've all been praising? More like a once-in-a-generation failure. His son, Asher, the cousin who had lived his entire life in my shadow, was staring at me with pure, unadulterated glee, a smirk stretching from ear to ear. How does it feel, Leo? Feel like a joke. I ignored him, my eyes locked on the symbol on the stone. They didn't recognize it, but I did. That was a goddamn Wi-Fi signal, and I had one bar. My affinity was Wi-Fi. Bella. I turned instinctively, looking to her, searching for a single shred of comfort. But the face I saw was a frozen, unfamiliar mask. The joy in her eyes was gone, replaced by shock, disappointment, and a sliver of undisguised disgust. Mayor Croft, Silas, seized his moment, turning to the man in the seat of honor. "You see, with such a cripple emerging in our family, we are no longer worthy of an alliance with your esteemed household. This engagement, I believe." Mayor Croft's face was grim. He glanced at my devastated father, then at his own daughter's cold expression. Finally, he spoke, his voice carrying across the silent courtyard. "Marcus, it's not that I wish to be unreasonable, but my daughter, Bella, possesses an apex tier fire affinity. Her future is limitless. This union is indeed no longer appropriate. As of today, let us consider it null and void." He broke the engagement. Just like that, in front of the entire city's elite, he severed our ties without a shred of mercy. "Dad!" Bella didn't object. Instead, she let out a breath of relief. She walked up to me, pulled the silver locket from her neck, our family's token of betrothal since we were children, and dropped it at my feet. We're not in the same world anymore, Leo. She turned and walked away without a backward glance. Humiliation. Absolute, soul-crushing humiliation. Get him out of my sight. House Vance has no place for such a waste. My father, finally snapping out of his shock, pointed a trembling finger at me, his voice a furious roar. Two of the family enforcers stepped forward, grabbing my arms to drag me away like a stray dog. Hold on. Asher blocked their path. He walked up to me, stepped on a locket by my foot, and ground it into the stone with his heel. Then he drove his fist hard into my stomach. A worthless piece of trash like you was never worthy of Bella. A burst of pain, and my vision went black. I collapsed, curling into a ball on the cold stone. Through the haze, all I could hear was laughter and scorn. Shame, rage, disbelief. The emotions tore through me, threatening to rip me apart. Just as my consciousness was about to fade completely, a cold, synthetic voice, devoid of all emotion, echoed in the depths of my mind. Weak Ethernet signal detected. Attempting to connect. Connection established. Signal strength, 1 bar. Welcome to the Ethernet Wi-Fi system. The annex was where the Vance family stashed its mistakes, disgraced members, and talentless washouts. I was dumped onto a pile of damp straw like a sack of garbage. The throbbing in my stomach and the gaping wound in my pride left me without the strength to even lift a finger. You just make yourself comfortable in here, Master Leo, one of the enforcers who'd thrown me and sneered. Oh, my mistake. There's no Master Leo anymore. Just Leo the loser. After they left, the annex's permanent residents closed in. Leading the pack were Big Mike and Tiny, 2 of Asher's most loyal dogs. They'd been sent here for breaking some minor family rule, and had always hated my guts. Well, if it isn't our genius heir, how'd you end up in the dump with the rest of us trash? Big Mike said, planting his boot on the back of my hand and grinding it into the dirt. Don't waste your breath, Mike. Master Asher told us to take good care of him, Tiny said with a twisted grin, grabbing a thick wooden rod from a corner. I looked up at them, my eyes cold. You dare. Watch us, Tiny snarled, and brought the rod down hard across my back. A searing pain shot through me, and I grunted. So what if you were a genius? You're just a piece of meat for us to carve up now. The blows rained down. All I could do was curl up, protecting my head and vitals. Just when I thought they were going to beat me to death, the mechanical voice sounded in my head again. Energy fluctuations detected. Signal strengthening. Auto-scanning. 2 data panels, visible only to me, materialized above the heads of Big Mike and Tiny. Name, Mike Big Mike Ross Power Tier. 3 Technique. The Stonebreaker Art Common Grade. Scan Analysis. Technique consists of 9 stances. Power application is crude and full of openings. Fatal flaws. 1. When executing a right cross, left ribs are completely exposed. 2. Stance is unstable. Center of gravity is weak. 3. Energy flow is inefficient, requiring a momentary pause after every 3rd strike. Name, Timothy Tiny Field's Power Tier, 2 Technique. The Stonebreaker Art Common Grade Scan Analysis. Similar to Big Mike. I froze. What? Is this? Getting tired? I rasped, looking at the panting Tiny. Still got a smart mouth, huh? Tiny roared, raising the rod again. That Stonebreaker art of yours, I said, my voice cold. Did your father teach you that? Or your mother? It's so full of holes. I'm embarrassed for you. Tiny's arm froze mid-swing. What? What did you say? I said. I slowly pushed myself up from the ground, my eyes sweeping over both of them. Your technique is garbage. You're asking to die. Big Mike was enraged. He let out a yell and threw a textbook Stonebreaker punch right at my face. The moment his right fist flew, I saw it, the massive, unprotected opening at his left side. I didn't dodge. Instead, I lunged forward, putting every ounce of my remaining strength into a sharp elbow strike, right into his exposed ribs. Crack! The sound of bone breaking was sickeningly clear. Big Mike let out a piercing shriek like a stepped-on cat. He flew backward, clutching his side as he writhed on the ground. Mike! Tiny was stunned. He couldn't comprehend how Big Mike, a Tier 3, had been taken down in a single move by me, a cripple with no affinity. Now it's your turn. I turned to him, taking a step forward. Tiny stumbled back, his face a mask of fear. Stay away from me. I've almost mastered the stonebreaker art. Is that so? I sneered, then hit me. Backed into a corner, Tiny let out a desperate yell and charged, throwing a wild punch. I didn't even bother to move. One punch, two punches, three. The instant he threw his third punch, the moment his energy flow faltered, I moved. I kicked his knee, shattering his stance. As he fell forward, I brought the edge of my hand down in a precise chop to the back of his neck. Tiny didn't even make a sound before he collapsed, out cold. The entire annex was silent. The other outcasts were staring at me with a mixture of terror and disbelief. I ignored them and found a quiet corner to sit down. I closed my eyes and began to explore the so-called Ethernet Wi-Fi system in my head. A user interface, much like one for a video game, appeared in my mind's eye. User, Leo Vance Affinity. Ethernet Wi-Fi, inactive. Signal strength, 1/5 bars, unstable. Connection target, the Ethernet connection quality, poor. Available functions, 1. Scan, scans target's information, analyzes weaknesses. Unlocked, 2. Download, downloads data, such as techniques, abilities, formulas, etc. Locked requires signal strength greater than or equal to 2 bars. I got it. My affinity wasn't useless. It was a cheat code, a superpowered hack. The scan function let me see everyone's weaknesses. What would happen when I unlocked download? Could I just learn other people's abilities instantly? My heart hammered in my chest. But the question remained, how do I strengthen the signal? When Mike and Tiny were beating me, the system said, energy fluctuations detected. Signal strengthening. Was it? I looked over at one of the other outcasts meditating in the yard. The ambient energy in the air was slowly gathering around him. I quietly moved closer, just as I thought. As I neared him, the blinking bar in my head began to flash faster, even seeming to glow a little brighter. So that was it. Ambient energy, what they called spirit or essence, was the source of my Wi-Fi signal. As long as there was energy in the air, my Wi-Fi could connect to the Ethernet. A wild, audacious plan began to form in my mind. The Vance family thinks I'm a failure. Bellicroft thinks I'm beneath her. Just you wait. Wait until I have full bars. I'll show all of you what a real genius looks like. Life in the annex was bleak, but for me, it was paradise. The ambient energy here was thin, but there were a dozen other outcasts, and they all had to practice, to meditate, to absorb what little they could. And I became the most popular guy in the annex. My daily job was to mooch Wi-Fi. I'd wander from one group to another. Whoever was meditating, I'd sit down right next to them. They were annoyed as hell, but ever since I had single-handedly taken out Big Mike and Tiny, no one dared to say a word. They could only watch in frustration as I drifted around them like a ghost. After 3 days, my persistence paid off. After 72 straight hours of relentless mooching, the mechanical voice finally chimed in my head. Signal stabilized at 2 bars. New function unlocked. Available functions. 1. Scan unlocked. 2. Low-speed download. Unlocked can download common and bronze tier data. Download speed is dependent on signal strength. It worked. I suppressed a surge of pure joy and turned my attention to the only valuable target in the annex, Big Mike. He was still nursing 3 broken ribs, lying in a corner, grumbling as he meditated on the pathetic mantra of his stonebreaker art. I crept over and thought to myself, scan, then download. Scanning target, Big Mike Ross. Available files for download. 1. Technique, the stonebreaker art, common grade. Begin download? Yes. Initializing download. Current signal strength, 2 bars. Download speed, 1 kb/s. Estimated time to completion, 8 hours. I almost coughed up blood. That was slower than dial-up, but it was better than nothing. I sat cross-legged, pretending to meditate, while my consciousness was fixated on the slow-moving progress bar in my mind. It felt like I was back in my old life, trying to download a movie on a 2G network. It was painful, but filled with anticipation. The night passed in silence. The next morning, as the first ray of sunlight pierced the gloom of the annex, the progress bar finally hit 100%. Download complete. Technique, the stonebreaker art, saved to system memory. Install now. Install. Loading. A massive stream of information flooded my mind. Every line of the mantra, every detail of the energy pathways, every nuance of the power application flashed through my brain like a high-speed instructional video. The entire process took less than 3 seconds. When I opened my eyes again, the world felt different. I could feel a faint but very real current of energy inside me, moving slowly along the pathways of the Stonebreaker art. I stood up, walked to the center of the yard, took a deep breath, and fell into a perfect opening stance. I threw a punch. The air whistled. A bundle of straw in front of me exploded, sending chaff flying everywhere. The power, speed, and angle of that punch were flawless. Better, even, than Big Mike's, and he'd been practicing it for over a decade. Everyone in the annex stared, dumbfounded. But he doesn't have an affinity. How does he know the Stonebreaker art? And did you see that? That punch was cleaner than Big Mike's. Lying in the corner, Big Mike looked like he'd seen a ghost, struggling to sit up as he stared at me in disbelief. I ignored their shock. I was reveling in a feeling of power I'd never known. So this is what it felt like to have an art. You all can spend a decade in grueling practice. I just need one night to download it. Leo, get your worthless hideout here. Just then, the gate to the annex was kicked open. Asher strode in, flanked by a few of his cronies. His eyes immediately fell on the injured Big Mike and Tiny. You piece of trash. Not only are you unrepentant, you dare to harm your own family members. Asher pointed at me, his face contorted with rage. They started it, I said calmly. I don't care. Asher spat. Today I'm going to do this family a favor and cripple you for good. Before his words even faded, he lunged, moving like a striking tiger. He was using the Stonebreaker art too, but the force behind his punches was leagues beyond anything Big Mike could muster. Scanning target, Asher Vance. Power tier 5. Technique, the Stonebreaker art, mastered. Fatal flaws. A stream of data flashed before my eyes. I didn't move. I met his punch with one of my own. BM, our fists connected with a dull thud. The force of the impact sent me stumbling back 3 steps, my arm numb. Asher only slid back half a step. Tier 5 is no joke, I said, shaking out my arm. See the difference now, loser? Asher sneered, lunging again. Today, I'm going to beat you into a pulp. His fists were a blur, each punch faster than the last. But with the scan function, I could predict his every move, see every opening. I dodged his attacks, always by the slimmest of margins. To an outsider, it looked like I was a leaf in a hurricane, about to be torn apart at any moment. Only Asher knew how frustrating it was. No matter how hard he attacked, it felt like punching cotton. He couldn't land a solid blow. Stop dodging, you coward, he roared, his frustration boiling over. Fine. As he threw his next punch, I stopped dodging. I glanced at the data panel above his head, at the flaw that read, Fatal Flaw. After a 3-punch combination, his energy flow must briefly reset. A cold smile touched my lips. 1 punch. 2. The instant the power of his 3rd punch began to wane, I moved. I didn't use the Stonebreaker art. I used a much simpler, more direct approach. I lowered my head and slammed it into his chest like a street brawler. Asher never saw it coming. The unexpected, thuggish move shattered his stance, and he staggered backward. Now, seizing the opening, I unleashed a perfect, system-optimized Stonebreaker punch right into his sternum. PFFD, Asher coughed up a mouthful of blood. His body went limp, flying backward like a broken kite before crashing to the ground. The entire annex was silent. Everyone stared, their jaws on the floor. A Tier 1 loser had defeated a Tier 5 prodigy. How was that possible? I walked over to Asher and looked down at him, just as he had looked down at me on the day of the reckoning. How does it feel? I asked, echoing his own words back at him. Does it feel like you're the joke now? The news that I had defeated Asher spread through the Vance estate like a wildfire. No one believed it. A Tier 1 outcast beating a Tier 5 talent? It was impossible. My uncle Silas was the first to arrive at the annex. Seeing his son lying on the ground like a broken doll, his eyes turned bloodshot, and he was about to attack me himself. Fortunately, my father, Marcus, arrived just in time to stop him. Silas, what do you think you're doing? Attacking a junior? Have you no shame? Marcus, your son cripple mine. How do you propose we settle this? He was bested in a fair fight. There's nothing to settle. The two most powerful men in the family argued furiously in front of everyone. In the end, the matter was settled as Asher instigated. Leo overreacted in self-defense. Both are at fault. Asher was carried back to his residence, and I was to remain in the annex to reflect. But everyone knew something had fundamentally changed. From that day on, no one dared bother me. The other outcasts in the annex now looked at me with awe instead of contempt. I welcomed the peace and quiet. It was time to level up. The internet speed in the annex was too slow. I set my sights on a better location, the family's private library, the archive. It was a restricted area, housing hundreds of ancient texts on techniques and abilities. The ambient energy there was thick. It had to be a 5-star signal hotspot. On a moonless night, I slipped out of the annex. Using my memories of the estate, I easily avoided the patrol guards and reached the outside of the archive. The building was lit, with 2 council elders standing guard inside. I didn't try to force my way in. I circled to the back, found a secluded corner, and sat down to meditate. High-density energy field detected. Signal strength increasing. Signal strength, 3 bars, stable. New functions unlocked. Available functions. 1. Scan unlocked. 2. Medium speed download unlocked, can download silver tier data and below. 3. Copy/paste unlocked, can instantly copy a target's active ability and paste it for personal use. Proficiency is dependent on signal strength. Copy and paste. I almost shouted out loud. This was a game changer. It meant that with a strong enough signal, I could learn anyone's ability in an instant. Just then, I heard a swish of movement. A figure landed in the clearing in front of the archive. It was Asher. His injuries had healed, and it seemed his power had even advanced. He was now at tier 6. He held a steel sword, and under the moonlight, he began to practice. He was training in one of the Vance family's signature techniques, the Zephyr Blade. His sword moved like flowing water, swift, silent, and deadly. I immediately activated scan. Scanning target, Asher Vance. Power tier, 6. Active ability, Zephyr Blade technique, silver tier. Analysis consists of 13 stances, focusing on speed and unpredictability. Asher has not yet grasped the core essence. His movements are stiff, transitions are flawed. Copy this ability? Copy. I thought. Copying. Current signal, strength, 3 bars. Copying complete. Ability, Zephyr Blade technique, save to clipboard. Ready to paste. Done. Suppressing my elation, I remained in the shadows and began to mentally paste and practice. In my mind, a perfect projection of myself executed the Zephyr Blade, over and over. The system automatically corrected all of Asher's clumsy mistakes, showing me the flawless version of the technique. The night passed. When Asher finally stopped, drenched in sweat, I had already mastered the entire Zephyr Blade technique to a degree he couldn't hope to achieve in a decade. The day of the annual family tournament arrived. It was the biggest event of the year, where all the young disciples showcased their progress. As the representative from the annex, I made my appearance on the training grounds. My presence caused a stir. What's that loser doing here? I heard he beat Asher a while back. Can't be true, can it? Bella was there, too, standing beside her father, the mayor, looking as proud and untouchable as a winter rose. Her gaze swept over me, a complicated mix of curiosity and scrutiny. I ignored everyone and took my place. The tournament began. My first round opponent was a tier 4 from a branch family. He saw it was me and scoffed. Get off the stage, loser. Save yourself the beating. I didn't say a word. I just crooked a finger at him. You're asking for it. He roared and charged. I didn't move. Just as he was about to reach me, I finally acted. I didn't draw a sword. I simply held up 2 fingers like a blade and made a single, casual slash through the air. An invisible blade of energy shot forward. It was fast, deceptively so. My opponent didn't even see the attack. He just felt a sudden coldness in his chest as he was thrown from the stage, knocked unconscious. The entire arena fell silent. Was that the Zephyr Blade? No way. He didn't even use a sword. Only the patriarch and a few elders on the main dais looked grim. They had recognized it. That single move was the opening stance of the Zephyr Blade, and it already contained the faint whisper of true sword intent. The next few rounds were a blur. No matter the opponent, I won with a single move. I always used the same technique, a sword art without a sword. My fingers moving too fast for anyone to follow. I carved a path straight to the finals. My opponent, unsurprisingly, was Asher. He stood across from me, his face a dark storm cloud. He couldn't understand how I had become so powerful in just 1 month. "Don't think you can beat me just because you learned a few parlor tricks, Leo," he snarled, drawing his steel sword. "Today, I'll show you the unbridgeable gap between a genius and a failure." "Is that so?" I finally walked to the weapon rack and picked up the most basic iron sword I could find. "Take this." Asher yelled and lunged, his sword a streak of light. It was the Zephyr Blade. His attack was filled with killing intent. I didn't dodge. I met his thrust with one of my own. Clang! Our swords met with a sharp ring. Asher's blade was easily deflected. "Impossible." His eyes widened in shock. "Your sword is too slow," I said, shaking my head. Then, in front of everyone, I mirrored his technique. No, it wasn't a mirror image. My sword was faster, more unpredictable, more perfect. The arena was filled with the flash of steel. Everyone was mesmerized. They watched as I used Asher's own signature technique to systematically dismantle his offense, pushing him back step by step, giving him no room to breathe. Who are you? How do you know my family's technique?" Asher was having a complete breakdown. "I don't just know your technique." I flicked his sword from his hand, sending it spinning through the air. Then I pressed the cold tip of my blade against his throat. "I know it better than you ever will." I stared into his face, twisted with fear and humiliation, and said coldly, "We didn't copy my sword technique. You're just that bad." I had won. In the most unbelievable and dominant way possible, I was the champion of the family tournament. You could have heard a pin drop in the arena. Everyone, including my father and Mayor Croft, stared at me as if I were some kind of monster. A month ago, I was the laughingstock of Ethelgard. Today, I had defeated my rival using his own signature ability, perfected beyond his wildest dreams. The whiplash was so severe it broke everyone's brain. He's a demon, an absolute demon. How did he do it? Was he hiding his true strength all this time? In the crowd, Bella's face was ashen. She looked at me standing on the stage, sword in hand, her eyes filled with regret and disbelief. What kind of diamond had she thrown away? Only Uncle Silas wasn't just shocked. His eyes burned with a venomous greed. That boy has a secret, he thought. A great secret. After the tournament, my father summoned me to the ancestral hall. It was just the two of us, surrounded by the memorial tablets of generations of Vance patriarchs. "Leo," my father began, his expression a complex mixture of pride and confusion. Can you tell me what's going on? How can I explain?" That my affinity was Wi-Fi, allowing me to download abilities and copy skills? He'd think I was possessed. "Father," I said, choosing a half-truth. "I was never a failure. My affinity is unique, and it required a special catalyst to awaken. My time in the Annex, by some stroke of luck, provided that catalyst. Once awakened, my power grew quickly. It was a weak explanation, but it was the only one I could give." My father was silent for a long time before letting out a heavy sigh. "Fine. Whatever the reason, you are my son, and you are a Vance. That's enough." He placed a hand on my shoulder, hope rekindled in his eyes. "From this day forward, you move back into the heir's residence. The family's resources are all yours." A warmth spread through my chest, but my secret inevitably attracted predators. That night, as I was meditating in my new quarters, trying to break through to Tier 7, a powerful and malevolent psychic presence invaded my room. It slithered towards my mind like a venomous snake, trying to probe my deepest secrets. It was Silas. Just as his psychic probe was about to touch the core of my consciousness, a klaxon blared in my mind. "Warning, unauthorized psychic intrusion detected. Threat level, adept tier, early stage. System firewall activating. Option 1, block and expel. Option 2, block and retaliate." Retaliate, I chose without hesitation. "You want to steal from me? Be prepared to lose a hand." Executing retaliation protocol. At that exact moment, in another residence not far from mine, Silas, who was sitting cross-legged in meditation, let out a blood-curdling scream. Arg! He felt his psychic probe slam into a wall made of a million razor blades, instantly shredding it to pieces. An unstoppable force, humming with the authority of the Ethernet itself, surged back along the connection and slammed into his mind. PFFD. Silas was struck as if by lightning. He sprayed a mouthful of blood, his aura instantly weakening as he crumpled to the floor. His mind, his very consciousness, had been severely damaged. It would take him years to recover, if ever. Impossible. What was that power? He stammered, paralyzed by a primal fear. It felt like the source itself. He was terrified. He would never again dare to pry into my secrets. And in my room, I slowly opened my eyes. Serves you right, you old bastard. I smirked, closed my eyes, and continued my meditation. After this, I was more certain than ever. My Wi-Fi affinity was far more powerful and mysterious than I had ever imagined. The next day, the news that Silas had been gravely injured during meditation and had entered seclusion sent another shockwave through the family. Everyone wondered how the cunning old fox could have suffered such a bizarre accident. Only my father shot me a long, thoughtful look. I acted as if nothing had happened and began to enjoy the perks of being a genius again. Elixirs, energy crystals, advanced techniques. The best of the family's resources flowed to me. My power level skyrocketed. Tier 7, 8, 9. In just half a month, I reached the peak of the initiate stage, only a single step away from the adept tier. This rate of progress wasn't just genius, it was monstrous. But a tall tree catches the wind. My meteoric rise made some people feel threatened. One day, an official family decree was issued. The heir, Leo Vance, is ordered to proceed immediately to the Wormfang mines in the Black Fong Peaks to supervise operations for 1 month. The Wormfang mines were one of the family's most important assets, but also the most dangerous. Located deep within the mountains, the area was infested with monstrous creatures. It was a death sentence for the inexperienced. Sending the heir, with no experience, to a place like that. The order reeked of conspiracy. Father, was this Silas's faction? I asked him. Marcus Vance nodded grimly. More than half the council elders voted for it. My hands were tied. I understood. This was a move to exile me, to let the monsters of the mountains do their dirty work. Fine, I said without hesitation. I'll go. I didn't refuse, because I had a feeling that the Wormfang mines, a place of chaotic energy and constant danger, might not be a hell for me. It might just be a paradise with full bars. The Black Fong Peaks stretched for 1,000 miles, a haven for monsters. The Wormfang mines were situated in a deep valley at the heart of the range. Here, the sky was perpetually shrouded in a gray miasma, and the air was thick with the stench of blood and sulfur. The ambient energy was wild and chaotic, scraping against your senses like 1,000 tiny knives. For a normal practitioner, it was hell. But for me, the moment I stepped into the valley, the system notifications in my head went wild. Warning: high-intensity, high-interference energy field detected. Signal is passively strengthening. 3 bars. 4 bars. Signal strength. 4/5 bars unstable. Network quality upgraded. Download speed increased to 100 kb/s. New functions unlocked. Available functions. 1. Scan unlocked. 2. High-speed download. Unlocked can download gold tier data and below. 3. Copy/paste. Unlocked. 4. Connection management. Unlocked can view and manage the Ethernet connection status of all targets within a designated area. 4 bars and connection management. I suppressed my excitement as I followed the mine's foreman, who had come to meet me, into the massive underground cavern. Inside, hundreds of ragged miners toiled under the dim glow of oil lamps, mechanically swinging their pickaxes. Most were distant relatives of the Vance family or exiles serving out sentences. Here, Leo, you can rest in this chamber here. If there's nothing you need, it's best you don't wander around, the foreman said with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. I could tell he was one of Silas's men. I ignored him and walked into the simple stone room. It contained nothing but a stone bed. I sat down cross-legged, eagerly activating the connection management function. Instantly, my perception of the world shifted. The world transformed into a massive web of countless blue lines. Mountains, rivers, trees, every single rock had a line, thick or thin, connecting it to some unseen source in the void. The miners each had a thin thread extending from them as well. But the most prominent connections came from the depths of the mine, from the slumbering beasts. Their connection lines were far thicker than any humans, glowing like fiber optic cables. So that's how it is. I murmured. Everything is connected. Everything is on the network. What they call cultivation is just the process of strengthening and optimizing your personal bandwidth. And I, the Wi-Fi administrator, could apparently pull the plug. Roar! Just then, a terrifying roar echoed from outside the mine. The ground began to tremble violently, dust and pebbles raining from the ceiling. Attack! It's the Ironhide rhinos. A beast tide is coming. The foreman's panicked shouts rang through the caverns. A beast tide. I rushed out of the stone room. At the mine's entrance, dozens of colossal beasts covered in black, armored plates were ramming against the defensive barricades. Leading them was a rhino king, nearly twice the size of the others, its horn glowing with a deadly light. Scanning target. Ironhide Rhino King. Class: Tier 2 Alpha Beast, equivalent to mid-stage Adept. Abilities: Savage Charge, Earthshaker Stomp. Weakness: Joints and armor plating, underbelly. Quick! Guard squad, hold the line. Everyone else, take cover, the foreman screamed, his voice cracking. But the mine's guard were mostly Tier 7 or 8 initiates. Against a Tier 2 beast, they were like paper. In the first clash, several guards were sent flying, killed instantly. The defensive line shattered. The miners screamed, scattering in terror. Despair flooded the cavern. The foreman watched the Rhino King thunder towards him. His legs gave out, and he collapsed in a puddle of his own making. At that critical moment, I moved. I didn't charge forward. I stood my ground, closed my eyes, and opened my connection management interface, locking onto the unstoppable Ironhide Rhino King. In my vision, its connection to the Ethernet was as thick as my arm, pulsing with brilliant energy. And next to that cable, a few options, visible only to me, appeared. Connection status: stable. Bandwidth: excellent. Operations: 1. Throttle connection: 2. Disconnect: 3. Banned permanently. Interesting, I thought. A cold smile played on my lips as I selected the second option. Confirm action. Disconnect target Ironhide Rhino King from the Ethernet. Confirm. Executing. In the next second, something bizarre happened. The Rhino King, which had been about to stomp the foreman into a red paste, froze mid-stride. The immense, chaotic power radiating from its body vanished, deflating like a popped balloon. Its crimson, rage-filled eyes dimmed to a dull, confused glaze. Its connection to the world's energy had been severed. By me. Moo. The Rhino King let out a confused, pathetic low. It couldn't understand why its immense strength had suddenly disappeared. In an instant, it had gone from a mountain-shattering Tier 2 Alpha Beast to just a particularly large, angry bull. Everyone stared, stunned. They had no idea what had just happened, only that the monster had inexplicably powered down. I seized the opportunity. I launched myself forward like a cannonball, appearing before the Rhino King in a flash. As it stared at me with its now dull eyes, I raised my fist. A perfect, flawless stonebreaker punch, charged with the full might of my peak Tier 9 power, slammed into its head. Boom! The massive skull exploded like a watermelon. The colossal body crashed to the ground, shaking the entire cavern. One punch. One kill. The mine fell into a dead silence. Everyone stared at me, standing beside the monster's corpse, as if I were a demon clawed up from the depths of hell. I ignored their gazes and slowly turned to face the herd of now terrified Ironhide rhinos. I grinned, showing a row of white teeth. Welcome to my 5G hotspot. Killing the Rhino King was just the beginning. The remaining Ironhide rhinos, though numerous, were nothing more than sheep waiting for the slaughter. I walked calmly into the herd. Disconnect, disconnect, disconnect. Like a cold, emotionless network administrator, I went about my work, pulling the plug on one beast after another. One by one, the ferocious monsters became docile livestock before me, their savage glow replaced by confusion and fear. I moved through them like a tiger among sheep, felling them with a single punch each. Half an hour later, the battle was over. The ground inside and outside the mine was littered with the corpses of iron-hide rhinos. Rivers of blood flowed across the stone floor, and I stood among them, my clothes clean, without a speck of dust on me. The surviving miners and guards looked at my back with nothing but pure, unadulterated awe. The foreman who had sneered at me was now on his knees, banging his head on the ground, too terrified to even breathe. I had single-handedly stopped a beast tide. The news flew back to the Vance family as if on wings. The family estate exploded. The first reaction of everyone who heard was, impossible. That was a beast tide. Even a team led by an adept-tier elder wouldn't guarantee survival. How could Leo, a mere initiate, have done it? When my uncle Silas heard the news in his seclusion chamber, he coughed up another mouthful of blood. He had tried to use a borrowed knife to kill me. Instead, he had sent a god-slaying weapon to the world's most target-rich environment. He was drowning in regret. Meanwhile, back at the mine, I began my power-leveling spree. The Blackfang Peaks had no shortage of monsters. My daily routine became actively seeking out powerful beasts, luring them to the mine, and then disconnecting and one-shotting them. My power grew at an insane rate. The bottleneck of the initiate stage shattered without a sound. A new power, 100 times stronger than before, was born within me. Adept tier. I had made it, and I discovered something else. Every time I disconnected a beast, a cloud of pure, unowned energy would be released, which my Wi-Fi affinity would automatically absorb. It was literally like killing mobs and gaining XP. A month later, when I was set to return to the family, my power had stabilized at Adept Tier 2. A growth rate like that was enough to make the entire city of Ethelgard tremble. My return to the Vance estate was a hero's welcome. The way the other young family members looked at me had changed. The scorn and jealousy were gone, replaced by fervent admiration. My father, Marcus, was so moved he wept openly, declaring before the entire family that I, Leo Vance, was the undisputed heir. Silas's faction fell completely silent, hiding in their residences, too afraid to even show their faces. The Croft family sent extravagant gifts, even hinting that they wished to rekindle our old relationship. I had their envoy beaten and thrown out. "Go back and tell Bella," I said coldly to the fleeing servant. "The person you looked down on yesterday is someone you can't even hope to reach today." But my high-profile return brought new troubles. The Vance family's sworn rivals, the Hawthorns and the Graysons, felt a deep sense of dread at the rise of this new monster. They knew that if I was allowed to grow, the balance of power in Ethelgard would be shattered forever. And so, on a dark, moonless night, a conspiracy against the Vance family was set in motion. The patriarchs of the Hawthorne and Grayson families, leading all their elite warriors and a mysterious, powerful late-stage adept they had hired, surrounded the Vance estate. "Marcus Vance, hand over Leo Vance, or your family will be washed in blood tonight." The Hawthorne patriarch's arrogant voice echoed through the night. The Vance family's defensive array instantly activated, covering the entire estate in a shimmering blue dome of light. "Hawthorne, Grayson, what is the meaning of this? Do you truly wish for mutual destruction?" my father demanded from atop the main gate, his face grim. "Enough talk." The mysterious expert in black stepped forward, his immense pressure washing over the estate. "You have 10 seconds to decide. After that, we break your shield and slaughter every last one of you." Despair settled over the Vance family. They had 3 adepts, including a late-stage master. We only had my father, a mid-stage adept. This was a battle we cannot win. "Father, there's no need to worry." Just then, I walked slowly onto the wall, coming to stand beside him. I looked down at the sea of enemies below, a cold smile on my lips. I raised my hand and gently placed it on the surface of the glowing defensive shield. Detecting large-scale local area network, Vance Family Defensive Array. Accessing network. Acquire administrator privileges? Yes. The moment I made the choice, my consciousness merged with the entire defensive array. Countless lines of energy-based code streamed past my eyes. I saw every node of the array, every pathway of its energy flow. This complex ancient shield in my eyes had just become a poorly written program full of bugs that I could edit at will. Administrator privileges acquired. Current status, super user. 10 seconds are up. Outside, the expert in black lost his patience. He raised a massive, cruel-looking blade. Get ready to die, you Vance rats. Break the shield. At his command, the 3 adepts unleashed their power simultaneously. 3 world-breaking attacks slammed into the blue light dome. Boom, the ground shook. The entire array flickered violently, its light dimming as if it were about to shatter. On the walls, the Vance family members turned pale. It's over. The shield is breaking. Ha ha ha. Nowhere left to run. You cowards. The Hawthorne patriarch laughed, preparing for a second assault. What's the rush? Just then, my calm voice carried clearly to every person on the battlefield. I was still standing on the wall, one hand on the shield, the other behind my back, looking completely unconcerned. It's just a broken shield. Is it really worth getting so excited about? Everyone stared, confused as to how I could be smiling at a time like this. Still talking tough when you're about to die, boy? The expert in black sneered. Am I? My smile widened into a demonic grin. I just think this little game of Break the House is a bit boring. How about we play something else? As I spoke, golden lines of code began to flow from my fingertips into the shield. Modifying array core code. Switching mode from passive defense to active offense. Attack directive. Indiscriminate system wipe. In the next instant, everything changed. The dimming blue shield suddenly erupted with a light more brilliant than anything before. The blue dome turned into a blinding, blood-red shell. A terrifying, apocalyptic aura poured out from it. This is bad. The array has changed. The expert in black was the first to sense the danger. But it was too late. Game on. I snapped my fingers. VWOM. The blood-red light pulsed outward, expanding like a celestial net, instantly enveloping every last member of the Hawthorne and Grayson forces. Arg! Piercing screams filled the night. The low-level initiates, the moment they touched the red light, simply vanished. Not vaporized, not turned to dust. They were erased, as if they were never there. Not a single drop of blood remained. Their connection to this world, their very data, had been forcibly deleted. Witchcraft. What is this witchcraft? The Hawthorne and Grayson patriarchs were scared out of their minds. They frantically channeled their power, trying to resist the red light's corrosion. But it was useless. Before the modified array, their resistance was futile. Their protective auras shattered. Their power levels began to plummet at a terrifying rate. Mid-stage adept, early-stage, peak initiate tier 9-8. In just a few breaths, they were stripped of their power, reduced from mighty adepts to helpless mortals. No, my power, my power. They howled in despair. Only the late-stage adept was still holding on, but his aura was flickering like a dying candle. He wouldn't last much longer. What? What in God's name are you? He stared at me, his eyes filled with the kind of terror one reserves for a devil. Me? I smiled. And then, step by step, I walked off the wall and into the air as if on an invisible staircase. I'm just your friendly, neighborhood network administrator. I stopped in front of him and raised a single finger, gently touching his forehead. And you've just been kicked from the server. Pop. The last of his protective energy vanished. The expert in black collapsed to the ground like a boneless puppet, completely and utterly powerless. Silence returned to the field outside the estate. Besides the scattered weapons and empty clothes, it was as if nothing had happened. The Hawthornes and Graysons, hundreds of their elite, had been wiped from existence. On the wall, every member of the Vance family, including my father, was completely petrified. They stared at the young man, floating in the air like a god or a demon, feeling their entire understanding of the world crumble. That night, the sky over Ethelgard changed. The Hawthorne and Grayson families, once pillars of the city, were reduced to a footnote in its history, and House Vance became the sole, undisputed ruler of Ethelgard. All because of me, Leo Vance. The name became a legend, a whispered taboo on the lips of everyone in the city. After that battle, my position in the family was absolute. No one, not even the most stubborn elders, dared to question my authority. I became the true master of House Vance. The first thing I did was drag Silas from his seclusion chamber. His power was stripped, his limbs broken, and he was thrown into the annex, left to experience the same humiliation he had once forced upon me. The second thing I did was pay a visit to Bellicroft. She met me in the main hall of the mayoral mansion. She looked haggard, and the way she looked at me was a pathetic mix of regret, fear, and a desperate, foolish hope. "Leo," she began, her voice trembling. "Miss Croft." I cut her off, my tone devoid of any warmth. "I didn't come here to reminisce. I came to finalize the end of our engagement." "No, Leo, please let me explain. I was wrong, I was blind. Just give me one more chance, please." She ran towards me, crying, trying to grab my hand. I sidestepped her easily. "A chance?" I laughed, a cold, empty sound. "When you were grinding my dignity into the dust, did you think about giving me a chance? I, Leo Vance, am not a dog you can summon and dismiss at your whim." I pulled something from my pocket. It was the locket, the one she had thrown at my feet, the one I had picked up. In front of her and her father, I closed my fist around it. Crack! The silver locket turned to dust. I watched the color drain from Bella's face. I felt no satisfaction, only a profound indifference. From this day forward, the contract is broken. We are done. I turned and walked away, and I never looked back. With these old scores settled, I began to pour all my energy into understanding the true nature of my Wi-Fi affinity. In ancient texts, the ultimate goal of cultivation, ascension, was described as shattering the void to become an immortal. But my system offered a different definition. Ascension, the process by which a user's data integrity reaches 100% and is uploaded to a higher-level server. This world was, indeed, a massive server, and I, a hacker with administrator privileges, wondered if it was possible to access that higher-level server without going through the formal ascension process. I began to try. I submerged my entire consciousness into my Wi-Fi affinity, attempting to follow the invisible network cable upwards to its source. It was an incredibly dangerous journey. My mind traveled through an endless void, witnessing countless bizarre worlds, each like a shimmering data bubble floating in a cosmic ocean. Just as my mental energy was about to give out, I finally saw it. At the end of all worlds, there was a single, massive existence radiating an infinite light, an entity beyond all description. That was it, the source of the Ethernet, the mainframe of this reality. But the moment my consciousness tried to approach it, an unstoppable, ice-cold will descended upon me. Warning: unauthorized access attempt detected. Initiating erasure protocol. A bolt of golden lightning, formed from the pure laws of reality, materialized out of nowhere and struck my consciousness. PFFD. Back in the physical world, I coughed up a mouthful of blood and was thrown across my chamber. My mind felt like it was splitting in two. I had failed. My privileges meant nothing before the mainframe. A newborn infant trying to challenge a god? A cold, mocking voice echoed in my head. A figure appeared in my chamber without any warning. He wore a silver robe, his features handsome, but his eyes as cold as a glacier. The power radiating from him was far beyond anyone I had ever met, including the expert in black. Scanning target. Power level. Data encrypted, access denied. Identity, arbiter of the source, level 4 administrator. Warning, higher dimensional entity detected. Target possesses partial administrator privileges. An arbiter, an admin, I understood instantly. He was here to run an antivirus scan, and I was the virus. You are Leo Vance. The arbiter looked down at me as if I were an insect. You possess a backdoor program that does not belong to this world. According to protocol, I am required to format you on site. Who are you? I demanded, clutching my head in agony. You don't have the clearance to know who I am, he said, raising a finger. Golden lines of code swirling at its tip. All you need to know is that everything you possess is a bug, and I am the bug fix. The golden light at his fingertip intensified. The icy grip of death closed around me. I didn't hesitate. I activated my connection management. Disconnect. But this time my ultimate ability failed. Command execution failed. Target's privilege level exceeds users. The arbiter's smirk deepened. Useless. Before a true administrator, Your little hacker tricks are a joke. Now die. The golden light shot from his finger, forming a blade aimed straight between my eyes. Was this it? Was I going to die? No. I refused to accept this. The blade of light was almost upon me. I could feel the chilling cold on my skin. In that split second between life and death, I made a desperate, insane choice. If I couldn't disconnect him, then I would disconnect myself. Disconnect me from this world. I screamed in my mind. Warning. This action is extremely dangerous and may result in permanent user data loss. Execute. Executing. Boom. In the infinitesimal moment before the blade pierced my skull, my body flickered, becoming translucent, like a bad TV signal. I had forcibly cut my own connection to the server, entering an offline state. The Arbiter's blade passed harmlessly through my ghostly form, striking the wall behind me without leaving a mark. For the first time, the Arbiter looked surprised. Voluntary logout? Interesting, he said, watching me with academic curiosity. But do you really think you can escape? As long as you exist in this reality, I can find you. He began to form a series of complex hand signs. The very space of the room began to warp as he used his admin privileges to forcibly scan for my data coordinates. I felt like a tiny boat about to be ripped apart by a hurricane. I couldn't just wait to die. My privilege level was lower, but my Wi-Fi affinity was a backdoor left by a super user. It had to have functions he didn't know about. I dove deep into my own affinity, frantically searching for a way out. Performing deep scan of affinity core. Hidden protocol found. Hostile takeover protocol. Description. In a situation with multiple administrators, user can inject a virus code to attack the target's firewall and forcibly seize their privileges. Warning. This action has a success rate of less than 1%. Failure will result in the user's complete and irreversible formatting. Less than 1%. I gave a grim, humorless laugh. I was dead either way. Might as well go down swinging. Execute hostile takeover protocol. Target, the Arbiter. Protocol initiated. Generating Ethernet virus. Virus generation complete. Injecting now. An invisible stream of data, humming with a destructive energy, surged out of my affinity. It traveled up the Arbiter's scanning link and invaded his consciousness. What is this? The Arbiter's face changed. He felt something alien in his mind. A ravenous black hole that was trying to devour his privileges and corrupt his very code. A mere virus dares to challenge me. He roared and immediately focused all his power to crush the invading code. A silent war, a battle of pure data, erupted in the space between our minds. My consciousness was split in two. One half desperately resisted the Arbiter's spatial lock, while the other half became the virus, wreaking havoc in his mind. Delete. Format. Lock. The Arbiter's commands came down like mountains, crushing my virus again and again. But each time it was destroyed, it would reform, endlessly resilient. My own mind was at its breaking point. Blood trickled from my eyes, ears, and nose. But I held on, because I could see that the Arbiter wasn't having an easy time either. My Ethernet virus, while not powerful enough to defeat him, was highly contagious. Every time he destroyed it, a tiny piece of his own code would become corrupted. His movements became slower. Flaws began to appear in his techniques. He was being assimilated by me. You lunatic! You absolute lunatic! The Arbiter screamed in a mix of fury and shock. He had never encountered an attack like this. We either die together, or you give me your privileges. I howled, using the last of my strength. Virus injection at 99%. Just then, the Arbiter made a ruthless decision. He forcibly severed the part of his own consciousness that had been corrupted. PFFD. He coughed up a spray of golden blood, his aura instantly weakening. Though he was gravely injured, he had successfully purged my virus from his system. He panted, looking at me with pure hatred. I'll give you this, boy. You're tough. But the game is over. He had lost some of his power, but he was still a level 4 admin. I was completely spent. He raised his hand for the final blow. But at that exact moment, a cold, synthetic system prompt echoed in both our minds simultaneously. Warning. Warning. Critical system error. Server base code has been illegally modified. Unknown high-level virus detected. Security protocol The purge has been activated. What? The Arbiter and I both froze. In the next second, the sky over the entire world went dark. A terrifying pressure, far beyond the Arbiter, far beyond anything I could comprehend, descended from the heavens, locking onto both of us. Our hacker war had crashed the server's AI, and now it was rebooting in safe mode to delete us both. The Purge, the ultimate security protocol of the world server. Once activated, it would unleash a world-ending storm to erase any and all viruses and bugs that threatened the system stability. And now, both the Arbiter and I were targeted for deletion. Damn it, how do we trigger the Purge? For the first time, I saw genuine fear on the Arbiter's face. Even as an administrator, he was nothing before the server's ultimate defense mechanism. This is all your fault, he roared at me. Takes two to tango, I shot back, wiping blood from my lips. If I was going down, I was taking him with me. Above us, the sky roiled with black clouds. Titanic bolts of purple lightning writhed within them, their thunderous roars shaking the very foundations of the world. Every living creature in Ethelgard was trembling, prostrated on the ground under the crushing divine pressure. No, I can't die here. A crazed light entered the Arbiter's eyes. He lunged at me, grabbing me by the collar. Boy, that back door of yours. There has to be a way. Tell me how to shut it down. Seeing his panic, a thought sparked in my mind. He was right. My Wi-Fi affinity was a super user's backdoor. In theory, it should have the highest priority. Maybe. There was a way. I dove back into my affinity, searching frantically, scanning Ethernet security protocol. Protocol, the Purge, priority level, maximum, attempting to gain control. Insufficient privileges. Access denied. It failed. It's no use, I said in despair. Useless. The Arbiter shoved me away, his eyes going dim. Boom! The first bolt of purple lightning fell from the sky. Its target was my chamber. It was over. Just as I closed my eyes to accept my fate, a kind, ancient voice spoke beside me. Don't be afraid, Leo. My eyes flew open. A familiar figure was standing in front of me, shielding me. It was the Grand Elder of the Vance family, the old man who had watched me grow up, the only one who had secretly given me elixirs when the entire world had turned its back on me. Grand Elder, get out of here! I screamed. Silly boy. The old man turned and gave me a gentle smile. I've lived for nearly 200 years. It's been a good run. The future of the family is in your hands now. As he spoke, he unleashed every last drop of his power. He was going to use his own body to block the divine lightning for me. No! My scream tore from my throat. But it was too late. The purple lightning struck. The Grand Elder's body, the moment it touched the divine fire, simply dissolved. Like snow in the sun, he vanished without a sound. There was no blood, no scream. His entire being, his body, his soul, his very data, was utterly and completely erased from the world by the server's AI. He wouldn't even be reincarnated. Aard! I stared at the spot where he had been, a sound of pure agony ripping from my lungs. An unprecedented volcano of rage and grief erupted in my chest. Why? Just because the users don't follow the rules, you, the high and mighty source, can just delete us at will? By what right? User emotional state has reached critical fluctuation. Mental fortitude has breached threshold. Affinity core seal, unlocked. Signal strength, forcibly breaking limit. 4 bars. Boom! Something shattered in the depths of my mind. A power 100 times greater than anything I had known before, a power that tasted of chaos and creation, erupted from the core of my affinity. Signal strength, 5 of 5 bars. Ultimate function unlocked. Welcome to Administrator mode. My perception of the world changed again. Reality itself dissolved before my eyes, resolving into its most fundamental state, a roiling sea of zeros and ones. The lightning in the sky, the Arbiter's terrified face, my own body, all of it was just flowing strings of code. And I could rewrite them. Your power. The Arbiter stammered, staring at me in disbelief. My hair floated around me, unburdened by gravity. My eyes glowed with a golden data stream. An aura of absolute authority, far beyond his own, radiated from me. I told you, I said, my voice as cold and emotionless as the void, that I was going to take your privileges. Boom! The second bolt of divine lightning descended. I didn't move. I simply raised a hand towards the apocalyptic thunderbolt and typed a single line of code into the fabric of reality. Command delete. The lightning bolt, powerful enough to erase a mountain, vanished less than a yard from my head, like it had never existed. The arbiter was completely and utterly broken. That's super user access. How is that possible? He babbled, stumbling backward in terror. Now, it's time to settle our accounts. I took a single step and appeared directly in front of him. I looked at his face, twisted in a mask of fear, and slowly raised my hand. You like fixing bugs, don't you? Today, I'm going to turn you into one. Command loop. Target. Arbiter of the source. Effect. Initiate infinite 404 not found cycle. No, you can't do this to me. I am from the overworld. If you kill me, the mainframe will never forgive you, the arbiter shrieked. His body began to flicker erratically, vanishing and reappearing in the same spot over and over. He was trapped in an infinite code loop from which he would never escape. I ignored his fading screams and looked up at the roiling thunderclouds in the sky. And you, my voice was quiet, but it seemed to pass through space itself, directly into the core of the world's AI. Let's talk. The thunderclouds froze. It seemed that the cold, unfeeling AI was capable of one emotion after all. Fear. Boom. A humanoid figure made of pure light slowly coalesced in the air. It had no face, no gender, only an aura of absolute, indifferent logic. It was the source, the god of this world. Unknown user has obtained super user privileges. Please state your identity. The AI's voice was cold and synthetic. My identity? I smiled. From now on, I'm a new patch. As the words left my mouth, I dissolved into a stream of pure data and surged upwards, merging with the being of light. I wasn't here to talk. I was here to take over. Warning. Core code compromised. Warning. Firewall breached. Warning. Base logic being rewritten. The AI's alarm bell screamed in the minds of every living creature in the world. Every practitioner on the planet felt their power go haywire. The world's network had crashed. This was a war for the ultimate authority. My consciousness slammed against the AI's titanic data core. It constructed firewalls of pure universal law, trying to isolate and delete me. And using the backdoor given to me by the original super user, I broke them one by one. I don't know how long it lasted, a second or 1,000 years. When I finally regained my sense of self, I had discovered that I had become the source. I could feel every breath of the world, every gust of wind, every drop of rain. All life existed within my thoughts. Core authority transfer complete. Congratulations, user Leo Vance. You are the new administrator of this world's server. I had won. I opened my eyes and descended from the sky. The arbiter was still trapped in his 404 loop, flickering in and out of existence. I had lost interest in him. I waved a hand. Command, exile. Target, arbiter of the source. Destination, random offline world, no Ethernet access. The arbiter's form gave me one last look of hatred before vanishing completely. I walked to the spot where the Grand Elder had disappeared and reached out my hand, scooping up something from the air. A few faint, flickering motes of light rested in my palm. The last remaining data fragments of the Grand Elder, not yet fully deleted. Command, restore. Command, recompile. Using my newfound power, I began to reverse the laws of reality, to rebuild a life. The motes of light gathered, slowly forming the translucent, aged figure of the Grand Elder Soul. Elio, he asked, looking at me with confusion. I'm here, Grand Elder, I smiled. Is this the afterlife? No, I shook my head. This is a new beginning. I waved my hand, and a gentle light enveloped his soul. Go in peace. In your next life, I promise you, a destiny of greatness. After sending the Grand Elder on his way, I walked out of my chamber. Outside, every member of the Vance family, including my father, was kneeling on the ground, looking at me with the same reverence they would a god. I said nothing. I just looked up at the sky. From this day forward, I would protect this world. They used to pray to the heavens. But I was the one who would change them. The first thing I did as the new god of this world was to give it a complete system upgrade. I patched the cold, rigid rules of the old AI. I deleted the purge protocol. Now, if a practitioner failed their ascension trial, their soul would simply be reincarnated, not erased. I optimized the world's energy network. Now, the entire world was a hotspot. Its ambient energy levels increased tenfold. But my boldest move was to rewrite the source code for affinity. Before, it was a matter of hardware, determined at birth. A failure was a failure for life. Now, I added a post-launch upgrade module. With enough willpower and insight, even someone who started with 1 bar of signal could, through hard work, upgrade their personal network card to Apex tier and even beyond. I gave every soul in this world a fair chance to defy their fate. After all that, I logged out of God mode. I was still Leo Vance, heir to the family. But everything was different. Ethelgard, and indeed the entire continent, entered an unprecedented golden age of cultivation. Countless youths once deemed hopeless suddenly found their connection to the Ethernet. And I began to consider my own path. With my current privileges, I could easily upload myself to the overworld the Arbiter had spoken of, but I hesitated. The Grand Elder's death had taught me that the universe was not a safe place. The mainframe, the programmers of reality, saw worlds like mine as disposable. Uploading myself, now, would be walking into the lion's den. I needed to be stronger, strong enough to challenge the programmers themselves. I began to use my authority to download and learn everything. I analyzed ancient immortal techniques, reverse-engineered lost arts. My power grew exponentially. In just a few short years, I reached the absolute limit of what this world could contain, the ascension stage. But I didn't ascend. It wasn't enough. I turned my focus to my Wi-Fi affinity. This backdoor from the original super user was my true ace. I began to try and reverse engineer it, to find out who left it and why. It took me 10 years to crack the first layer of its encryption. And then I saw a vision, a universe made of countless server worlds. A man in a lab coat, sitting before a console, typing on a screen of light. The super user. He seemed to sense my gaze across the void of time and space, and he smiled. A message streamed directly into my mind. Hello, test subject 10086. If you are receiving this, you have successfully activated the Prometheus project. We seek to break the mainframe's monopoly on reality. Your Wi-Fi affinity is a key and a fire. Do not upload. The mainframe is always watching. Your task is to upgrade your world. Make its data footprint so massive that the mainframe cannot ignore it, cannot easily format it. When your world becomes a server that threatens the mainframe itself, come find me. The coordinates are in the final layer of encryption. The message ended. I stood in silence for a long time. I was not alone. I was a chosen agent in a cosmic rebellion. Upgrade the world. My eyes burned with a new fire. Ascension? I was thinking too small. I was going to take this entire world with me. My new plan began. I called it the Server Upgrade Project. I built massive energy-gathering arrays across the planet. I made all knowledge free and open source in a celestial archive. And then, I used the key function of my affinity to open a gateway to another, weaker server world. All Ascendant Stage practitioners, hear my call. My voice boomed across the planet. On the other side of that gate is another world, a new frontier. Conquer it, and we grow stronger. Fail, and we will be consumed. The expedition begins now. A war between servers had begun. The mainframe noticed. Legions of arbiters descended, calling us a virus world, and me, the virus king. It was a war that lasted 1,000 years. My world grew, devouring others, integrating them. My Wi-Fi affinity evolved beyond 5 bars, unlocking abilities to edit the laws of physics to rewind time. I became a super virus that the mainframe could not delete without risking a universal crash. Finally, I unlocked the final layer of encryption. I had the coordinates. It was time. I left my world in the hands of my father and my comrades, and stepped into the void. I arrived at a place outside of time and space. The man in the lab coat was waiting. You're here, he said. I'm here. What is the mainframe? I asked. It is not a being, he explained. It is the embodiment of entropy, the universal tendency towards silence and dissolution. We, Prometheus, are the embodiment of variables, of possibility. He held out his hand. Welcome, Leo Vance. I took it. One last question, I said. What is the final form of this power you gave me? He smiled. What do you think? I closed my eyes. My affinity was no longer a tool. It was me. It was my world. It was the billions of souls and trillions of data points I had integrated. My consciousness expanded. The entire network of the cosmos laid itself bare before me. I was everywhere. I was the network. I opened my eyes, and in them, a billion stars were born and died. I see. Full bars. I am a signal. End.